Welcome everybody to Matuska this afternoon live. And actually, we're not really live. I'm alive. The girls are alive. The broadcast is technical difficulties, not necessarily live, but you are going to see it probably in the next day or two when they format it and get it ready to show you. Looking on the news, we see that the United States has been hit by a government cyber attack, so maybe that's our problem. Maybe there's somebody trying to interrupt our broadcast, so we are hamstrung from bringing you the latest and greatest techniques in the world of taxidermy. So we're going to continue with our Alaska project, and if you were tuned in last week, Brett was by himself, I was out of town. This week, Brett is out of town, so I am winging it by myself. And I think last week he worked on the Caribou, and I think he probably did an eye set for you, maybe a set of ear, various other things to get this Caribou project going. So far we have proceeded and sewn up this cave, but we haven't done some of the important aspects. We still haven't finished the face. I've set one eye to streamline the broadcast for you a little bit, and we still have to do something with the back. This is a pedestal, if you remember, and now we kind of had it lined up with a branch, and that's going to hold this Caribou on a pedestal. Originally it was going to be on the floor. The pedestal got a little bit larger. It's going to be a really nice hickory hexagon, and the branch that's coming out of that is going to look something like this, and it attaches over on the shoulder. And this is probably, I'm going to say, a 3/8 inch by 3/8 inch square rod that we bent so it goes down into this branch. This is a cedar, kind of just a scrubbed cedar post, but it's very, very strong, and it's going to hold the Caribou just fine. This will be attached to the hexagon, and if you look back on, we didn't show you this, but if you look back on some of our other broadcasts, we've done this on deer before. We put the female tube in the Caribou shoulder before he's mounted, so that we get this nice and level, slide him on. We bonded the tube inside of the shoulder and leveled him up really nice and level. Now there's plenty of time if something goes wrong and you didn't get him aligned exactly the way you want him as far as straight, maybe his head's crooked. We've done a lot of different things to correct that situation. You can get your Caribou mannequin set up, slide it onto the post, and what if his head is just a 1/4 inch off to the left or the right? Many times everything looks good, we like the attitude, we like the pose, his head's crooked. We will simply cut the head off, readjust it, and reattach it. Then when we put the rod down through the neck, it makes everything really nice and secure. So that's one opportunity that you have to straighten things up, is to cut the head off. Say you get the Caribou mounted, you slide him onto his base, and all of a sudden he's just lists to one side or the other. We still haven't connected the support branch to anything yet, so at this point we can still tilt him a little bit whichever direction we want to go before we attach this to the base. Another opportunity to correct any symmetry issues or any crookedness that you might encounter. After he's connected to his little inset base, we can set that onto the hexagon, and we still have one more opportunity to alter him a little bit. So there's several chances that you get if something goes wrong. Many times you get into a heavier animal, like we're going to be doing the moose, and we're going to show you how to do the moose. That mounted moose is going to be, I'm going to say, 75 pounds. And with big antlers out there, cantilevered out from your attachment, there's a lot of opportunity for your mount to sag. This post and our tubular steel sleeve are very, very tight fitting, but there's a lot of them on the market out there that there's some wobble in there. So you get your moose on your sleeve, you slide him down on his base, and the whole thing leans forward just because of the weight of the moose. You have to kind of plan for that in the early stages and make sure that once the antlers are on that you test the weight, because the weight can force your animal into a crooked posture that you're going to want to be careful of. Anyway, so you can look back at any of our whitetail, I think we did it on whitetail, maybe some other animals, how we address the post and the sleeve inside of the animal's shoulders. And you can do, this is a shoulder attachment, which is a little more subtle and a little bit classier. The moose, because of the big weight, is going to be out the center of the brisket. So you can look back and see how that's done. Okay, and to save time, we sewed the caribou up, and he was open. If you noticed before when we were working with him, and we probably mentioned it to you, he was cut all the way up the back. That's how he came to us. There's different ways of handling that. Many times if it's a deer that we're doing, we will actually sew up the hide while it's on the table, turned inside out, and we'll just do a nice baseball stitch all the way up so that we can treat him like a tube cut deer and slide it onto the mannequin. We sew a lot of things, and sewing is not an issue for us. So to sew the entire length of it, as long as you have a nice seam to work with, we don't have a problem with that. Is what we chose to do on this. So everybody knows how to sew, so that's, you know, we kind of did, we spared you the agony of watching us do stitch after stitch after stitch. Okay, you've got a lot of different things to worry about here, or to pay attention to. We got ears, we got eyes, we got tear duct. Antlers were already affixed. Remember, look back, the antlers were sawed in down the center so that they could be economically sent to us. So we had to attach that. And remember that if you look back, anytime that's a little ribbon of skin from the skull plate on the right and the skull plate on the left, little ribbon of skin, there's not a glue in the world that's really going to hold that very, very strong. So we glued it to start with, and then we put ready rod, like maybe 3/8 inch or 1/2 inch ready rod, up into the main beam, and then bent it so it came straight down in 2 little parallel posts out of each main beam. We've marked where those were. We drilled holes down through the wood block and into the foam head, and then test fit them so that they would go down in there, filled it full of auto body putty, slid them on, and you get one chance at making those straight. So make sure that you're test fit it many, many times before you fill it full of auto body putty and walk away. Anyway, so these are on forever, and there's no detachment here. You're never going to get them off, never going to alter them. When we do something like that, we mix the auto body putty somewhat weak so that when they set down on there, we have probably 10 to 15 minutes before they firm up. So if anything goes wrong, we can yank them off and redo it. Okay, we got nose, we got lips, the mouth, all of that. Now you remember we showed you early in the broadcast, I think Brett sculpted out the nostrils, and when you do that, with whatever tool you use, it's hard to make that very, very nice and smooth in there. So you can use eye tools, you can use little, you know, any kind of little cutting instruments you can find, or carving instruments, but you're going to have raw foam. Raw foam is not going to give you a really nice finish. So what we did was take fix-it sculpt, all kinds kinds of different putties out there. Fix-It Sculpt is one we use a lot in the shop. A and B, mix A and B together. It's very, very strong epoxy putty. We mixed a little bit of flesh-colored paint, a little bit of red paint in there to make it flesh-colored, and then sculpted the inside of the nostril to match the right from the left. It's real easy to carve. One, real nice and accurate. It looks good, but it's very difficult to carve two that match. So we did that. So the nostrils are finished. There's not going to be any real detail work to do inside of the nostril, except maybe a little edge where your skin is gonna stop, and we may have to finish that edge. Depends on what it looks like. The lip slot, I cut the lip slot for you in one of the earlier broadcasts, and cut it with a lip slot cutter, that little bit, and then we took sandpaper and folded it in half and ran fine sandpaper, like 220 sandpaper on the lip, to make it large enough, because you have to have it wide enough to accommodate this little apron of skin and this little apron of skin with it. So that gives you a kind of a little bit of thickness that has to go in there. So we cut that up. As far as the tear ducts, we took a little tool and we cut you can use your lip slot cutter, you can use little knives, you can use different little tools. It's just a little, I think it's a lip tucker is actually what it is. But that, you can cut your lips with it, and we chose to reach up in and cut the tear duct with that also. Okay, to start with, you can make sure, I'm going to back up a little bit since you didn't get to see it, make sure that your animal fits. Don't spend a lot of time on your face only to find out that you've got a 3-inch gap going on the back of the neck. Lots of people will do that. They get all excited and think the face is fitting real good, and they do the eyes and they do the ears, and everything's nearly complete here, and they start sewing only to find that pretty soon they're using the pliers, and the pliers isn't working, and pretty soon they're doing, you know, tearing their thread through the skin. Make sure everything fits before we start this process. Questions?
Yes. What type of thread, needle, and stitch combination do you use?
You can use anything that you're used to. We use a whole lot of fire thread. And fire thread, let me grab a little spool. This is made by the Berkeley company, and we worked with them to develop it for taxidermists. But it's actually like their fishing line, like their fire line, comes in, oh man, 4, 8, 10, 12, 16, I mean, all kinds of different thicknesses. We like to think it's very versatile because this is 8. If 8 is too thin, and when I try putting a little pressure on my skin, it tears through, all I have to do is double it with the needle on the end, and I've actually got 16, and I got twice the holding power, and it tends to not cut through, or I can go up to, you know, 10 pound, 12 pound. So that's our choice of line. We use it for everything. The fine line is extremely fine, so fine that old people have trouble threading their needles. So the fine stuff is very, very fine. Good for ears, noses, eyes, real thin areas. That's my choice for sewing up. And I would say on the back of this we probably used a 20 pound because he has nice, even though it's a short-haired caribou, short-haired caribou has longer hair than a long-haired deer, kind of. So he has nice long hair to hide stitches, and we didn't have to worry about leaving a fine seam down the back. And so what we start doing is we start sewing with a baseball stitch. Needles like in an animal like this with that long a hair, I like to use an S needle. I'm not sure of my size. I'm going to say this is a number 2-ish. And it's an S, but it's something I can grab in my hand really well without slipping. It's interesting because this needle and this little needle both make the same size hole. One has a lot longer shaft to hang on to, one has a shorter shaft, but the hole that they make is actually the same. And they're 3-cornered cutting needles made for leather work. A lot of people will use, you know, big needles like this. I like to use these for fish because I can grab them really good on a slippery fish. If we were sewing up maybe an impala or an African animal that's very thin-skinned and short-haired, I would use a little bitty guy like that, and I'm going to guess this is maybe a 12 or 14, and they come in Glover's needles or 3-cornered cutting needles. Cuts through. If you have to force your needle through using a pliers or the edge of your fingernail, your skin is too thick and needs to be thin. So you want to be able to push it through very, very easily. So that's my choice. Fire thread and a needle that you can hang on to real good, and a stitch. We use a baseball stitch most of the time. And whenever you're sewing, sew a little bit and go back and check your stitches. Sometimes you can actually pull your stitches too tight and your leather and your seam will pucker. You don't want it to pucker, but as it dries, you don't want it to spread also. So sew a little bit, take a hairbrush, brush the hair out of the seams, and go back and check, see how it looks. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do, we've sewed up, and we just had kind of a little Y cut from the antlers, just like a whitetail, and then the seam all the way down the back. So one leg of that, tie it off, so the other leg, and just keep on going right down the middle of the back. Some of you, and I sometimes get careless, and I have, my skin dries away from my antler burr, and I have something that I have to fix, and sometimes I'll be disappointed in I have a little gap where my skin receded after it's all dry. The only way to fix that is to rehydrate your skin, pull it back up there, tack it into place, hope that it stays. Prevention is better than having to fix it. To prevent that, on any animal that you get back from the tannery or tan yourself, you're going to want to thin, just like you thin the eyes, thin the nose, thin the lips. You're going to want to thin that circle of leather around that goes around the bird. Make sure that you thin that really, really good. You know, that's one of the thick places you're going to find yourself having to use a pliers and force your needle through. Thin it very, very well. When you thin it, it doesn't have the power to draw back and pull away. So the first thing you're going to want to do is thin that really thin. We also do a little kind of a coin purse, we call it coin purse stitch, where we'll go around the antler burr and then cinch it up, so it kind of cinches the skin up around the antler burr. Once we get it sewn up, I can go back and I can look and see how tight I am. And I'm okay tight-wise, but I can see that I can get my finger between the antler burr and the skin. I like to do something to hold that there as prevention. Now, the one thing I did was I thinned my skin. That was a very important thing. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of fixing sculpt. Many of you have different inventions on how to hold this in place. Ideally, you're going to thin that skin, you're going to sew it up really nice and tight, you're going to check it tomorrow, you're going to coax it up, make sure it's staying and not shrinking. A couple days later, you're going to check it again. I tend to not be a very good babysitter. I'll sometimes get in trouble around the antler burr. Okay, fix it sculpt. I'm going to knead it together so there's no marbling in it. I'm going to walk over to the sink and run it under water so it doesn't stick to my fingers. Remember, any of these epoxies, if they're not mixed well, if you have marbling in the swirlies in there, it's not mixed good enough. Okay, I'm getting it mixed pretty well. Now I'm going to take, for lack of a better description, a night crawler diameter of Fix-It Sculpt, and I'm going to roll it out and I'm going to tuck it around between the skin and the antler, and I'm going to push my skin into this epoxy sculpt, which is going to help glue it in place so that when the epoxy sculpt sets, it's also adhered to the skin and the bone around the antler burr. In addition to that, it's going to give me something I can drive a brad nail into if I would have to. I'll put just a little bit. And I'm going to do about 1 inch at a time. Maybe 2 inches. I'm putting it under the skin. Now don't make a mess when you do this. You don't want to have it oozing out the top of your hair. Now, if you're really fast at sewing, you can put that on and sew him up and put it in later, push it in later. Just so the epoxy doesn't dry before you get him sewn up. Or you can do one at a time. Now I'm going to take my skin and push it up where I want it, where it joins the velvet. The interesting thing about velvet is the velvet is kind of just an extension of your skin, and it flows right up the skin actually flows and becomes velvet. Okay, now I'm pushing this all really nice and tight. it's bonding my skin to my antler burr. That in conjunction with the thin skin around here is going to hold that in place. Now, should I think I have a problem and I want to make sure it doesn't draw away, I can take a little brad nail. I can't pound a brad nail into the bone because you'll bend it, but I can pound it into my fix-it sculpt. And that fix-it sculpt, you're going to want to feel. You don't want a lump or a ring all the way around the antler burr. So I'm with my finger, I'm feeling that and I'm squeezing it out really nice. Okay, then it's best if you groom these areas as you go. We're going to come back to them. We're going to spend a lot of time with our hair patterns, but go ahead and make this look nice as you go here. And these ear butts, remember, I think Brett shaped the ears and set the ears on the mannequin before we put him on. And all we had to do was slide the whole cape on, and the ear butt made out of clay conformed right to where it was made in the first place, where it was sculpted and modeled on. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do, there's certain things you know where everything goes, and there's things you don't know where it goes. We know the antlers, the skin for the antlers goes here. That's a given. You can't get that off. The ears were modeled on according to our reference before we started. Ears are where they go. We can see the eyes are, the eye holes are around, you know, where the eyes go. This is drying out on me. I'm going to take a little bit of water and I'm going to squirt it with water. If your skin gets too dry, you can't make it conform. And it'll soften up pretty fast here. So you have little indicators where everything goes and if you're on the right track. Tear duct, I can feel my tear duct underneath here. My skin lines up good. Now if my tear duct skin was way down here and my eye hole was way ahead of where the eye is, I know that I'm in trouble. But everything's kind of looking like it's where it's supposed to be. Now we haven't, the whole hide has been glued. This has not been glued up to his eyes. So I'm going to slide this back and I'm going to take a brush and I'm going to apply hide paste all the way back to the eyes. And I'm going to use Pro One hide paste. And you can use your hand, you can use anything that'll spread it out for you.
Is Pro One what you use on all of your game heads?
Pro One's a good hide paste. We use it often. In the olden days, we used to use a dextrin-based hide paste, and you could buy it or mix it yourself. And or mix it yourself, and we still do use a dextrin hide paste sometimes. You have to be a little careful with a wheat base. I think a lot of them are wheat based. They're like a wallpaper paste because they can get too much hide paste and not get dried out can cause you issues with slippage. It can cause you issues with odors. Pro One is not that kind of hide paste, or Dermagrip. Dermagrip's another good one that we use a lot of. Pro One and Dermagrip are great hide paste, but with every good thing. There's sometimes drawbacks, and one of them is they can dry too fast. And when they dry too fast on a big project, you can't work with it tomorrow sometimes. So if we were doing, for instance, a life-size caribou, we would try to put our hide paste in little by little, not all. Don't rub it on the whole animal and then start sewing up on his foot or on the back of his neck, because your hide paste is going to start drying and you won't be able to work with it tomorrow. So in that instance, a lot of times we'll use one of the hide pastes like Dermagrip or Pro 1. We'll use that on the face, mount the face, and then when it comes to the body where we need more working time, we will use one of the, like the brown hide pastes. It gives us more time. Long answers, huh?
Yeah. Good answer. Good question. I mean, good answers.
Now it looks like I'm putting a lot on here, and I'm have plenty, but I want to make sure that it I got it everywhere, and I'll squish it all out. And I've got it in the hair. It'll come out with a little bit of water.
So this all seems very similar to your deer demos. What is different that I will need to know?
Who's asking these questions if we're not live? Anyway, are you thinking these up as we go?
Yeah, I'm curious.
It's exactly like our deer demo. I tell everybody that. They'll ask. They'll get frustrated because they don't know how to do an animal that they got, like a caribou compared to a deer, or like a muskie compared to a smallmouth bass, or like a turkey compared to a wood duck. They're all the same except size, you know. They're a little different size. The only thing different with a caribou is we bought a caribou form. The only thing different with the caribou is it took 3 hours to sew up the back instead of 1 hour to sew up the back. The only difference in a caribou for a deer is the eyes are different color, you know. So we really don't change very much. Size will be different, color will be different, and then the most important thing is, instead of a deer or a caribou, we're using caribou reference. So add all that stuff together, and now you can mount a caribou. Same thing, but tiny bit different. Okay, now one thing I want to do before I get too involved in the rest of the face or tucking the lips, I want to make sure that his nose is where his nose goes. And this is important, especially with the deer. I've seen a lot of people take the skin from the nose and they pull it way down here and they tuck the lips. And now all of a sudden the nose pad is pulled way, way, way far forward because they tucked too much skin in here. So it's important on almost any animal. I like to get the nose situated where the nose goes, like the nose pad. And I'm going to have to taxi some skin around here. And you'll see the little colics, you'll see where the skin is meant to go inside. The hair changes direction. And I'm just using a little form rougher. Works really good as long as you don't get too crazy with it. Works really good to adjust your skin and to taxi your skin. Okay, now I think this fits real nice. Now I'm going to trim. I don't need to tuck I've got stretched out, I've got 2.5, 3 inches of skin here. I don't need that much skin to tuck inside of there. I want to go in so it stays really good, and I can tuck some plastic in behind it and force that skin into the cavity and take on the shape of the cavity that Brett built. So I'm going to trim that. Something I had to do before we came on the air is we love these little Wesnip scissors, but we cut everything with them. We cut tin with them, we cut cardboard with them, we cut all kinds of stuff with them. They get dull and they don't work anymore. So rather than buying a new pair of scissors, this is just a little flat file from those little Riffler file sets, and you can really, this is hard, shouldn't do this on live because then I'm going to try it and it won't cut anything. But you can restore the edge on them really easy and make them go for another couple months.
And where can you find all these tool sets?
Matuska Taxidermy Supply Company. I missed the most important part.
Oh no.
Now don't cut too much off, and test, I keep checking to make sure that I'm not taking too big of a snip here. Now, Caribou have a lot of hair in their nose, so don't trim that all away. Because inside is only going to be pink epoxy. Okay, now I got all that skin going, that the hair patterns that were going the wrong direction that's meant to be inside of the nostril is all going where it's supposed to go now. Now I don't know if you can see, this is all real nice. The seam is right on the edge of the nostril. Down here I have much too much hair going the wrong way. We're going to bring that up. And now I put glue all the way around on the nose. I'm just going to kind of push the skin right down into the glue. Caribou have a real nice little colic where all of the hair kind of radiates from that spot right there. So make sure that's in the middle. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. And at some point, before I set him aside to dry, I'm going to take, we use a lot of plastic wrap, like, I don't know, saran wrap or, you know, any of that plastic wrap. And we'll tuck that in there really nice and tight, put a couple brad nails or staples in there to hold it, and let that dry that way. And then we'll pull that all out and do our finish work in there. From looking in here, I'm not going to cut anything with the scissors. I'm just kind of pushing the hair out of the way. But looking in there, I don't see even the edge of the skin, and I see hair all the way in there. It looks very natural. I don't think there's going to be any finish work to do whatsoever in this Caribou, in the nose. So if we're not exactly live, I can say anything or mess up anything and you can cut it right out, can't you?
Exactly. It's pretty spiffy.
No stress here. Oh, and I should mention, what's today? I should ask the question, what's today? Today is Thursday.
Thursday.
And Thursday is ice cream day.
Ice cream day,
and
yes.
the ice cream truck. And I want to give a shout out to Chris Dunlap. We got this letter, I'd say 3 months ago. And it says, it came with a $20 bill. It says, Dear Tom, hi Tom, I just wanted to say thanks again so much for taking the time on Wednesday, February, came in February, February 22nd, to share with me about fish molding and casting. Also, a while ago I talked with Brett once before. I just wanted to give you something for my appreciation for your time. So here's something to use for your ice cream hot summer day or whatever you choose. God bless all of you at Matuska Taxidermy. Thank you very much, Chris. We did today. The entire shop got root beer floats and ice cream cones and bars, so thank you very much. That was very appreciated.
Thank you.
And I think last week was the first time the ice cream truck came for the year.
Yeah, I think so. It's perfect, especially for today's extremely hot.
Summer is here.
It is.
Okay, now just balance your colics where you can see where it's supposed to go inside of the nose. Just balance that all out, and when we put our plastic wrap in there and force the skin to take on that shape, you'll have it much closer if you spend a little time now. Okay, I'm going to turn that towards you. You can see the nozzle. Well, it's not perfect, and we'll fine tune it, but that's kind of what he's going to have. Okay, now I'm going to attempt to tuck his lips, and rather than tuck his lips like this, I like to turn them upside down, so I'm working down on them. So it'll take me just a second to get him lined up here. Typically don't like using tools on these mounting stands, but he's a little heavier than it is. Okay, make sure that you have a nice slot, not too big a slot, not too little a slot. It has to be just right to handle this skin and that skin. Go in firm, but not too firm. Loose, but not too loose. Has to be just right. So my method is, I'm gonna get the upper lip out of the way. I'm gonna test fit where I think my bottom is gonna go. I want to tuck, when I cut this, I should have a 1/2 to 3/4 inch. I've got about that much. I've almost got an inch of depth. So I want to make sure that I'm not too, you don't want to be tucking in 4 inches of skin. So I'm trying to get just the right amount of skin. Now, it's difficult to gauge your lip slot with your lip skin. I like to put a little bit of clay, and I'm going to use critter clay. You can use epoxies if you want, but I would like something that's going to stay soft for maybe a few more days. Now you can put this in the bottom lip, or you can put it right here and tuck around it. Now don't put so much in that it looks like he's chewing tobacco. Another place I'm going to put some is I'm going to put a little bit around the back corner. Another little night crawler. Around the back corner. Now I can always smooth this out to as flat as a piece of paper if I put too much. Caitlin, you could be a pretty good taxidermist by now because all of you watched.
I should be able. You would hope.
Someday we should have a test.
We should. That would be very interesting and probably pretty comical.
That would be, that would kind of help us know if we're very good at these broadcasts.
Or maybe I just don't have good paying attention skills.
Couldn't be. Okay, now, that's raw foam in there. I have a lot of glue that I kind of gushed everywhere, but other than that, it's raw foam, and foam does not tuck very good at all. So I'm going to take a little bit of glue to help my skin slide in there. Now, however much glue you put in, make sure that you can get rid of it and disperse it and thin down the amount that you're putting in. Okay, now as far as lip tucking tools, I've seen every tool imaginable used. You can use sticks, you can use things like this, you can use all kinds of different tools. This is a good one. It's a commercial lip tuck tool. Lip tucker, is that what it's called?
Lip tuck tool.
Lip tucker? Lip tuck tool. But it's nice. It's like a, I don't know, kind of like a little hockey sticky type thing. It's kind of thin. You don't want to use anything too wide. That works well. Something I've used from the beginning of time is this was a putty knife, and I cut it off. And then I took it over to the belt sander and I sanded the edges into a shape like this. And it looks like it's 100 years old because it is. It's as thin as a putty knife, and because it's the back edge of one, or the bottom one, and works really good. And we've got several of these laying around the shop. But something like that, something very, very thin. I know Brett has a Chicago knife that got damaged so bad that he cut it off and flatten the blade on the edge, and it's got a nice Chicago cutlery handle, and he likes that. So whatever you can come up with that works well for you, just not too wide, because you're tucking it in with 2 layers of skin, which can spread your lip. So I'm going to start with the bottom front. Now think, as you're doing this, think you've got this great big hoop of skin. I mean, this thing spread out is probably 16-inch circle of skin. If you start here and start tucking, by the time you get over here, your lips are going to be all misaligned. So we're going to divide it into 2s. We're going to take the front bottom lip, and we're going to tuck that first. And be careful when you tuck. You don't want to puncture your skin. This is a technique that takes a little bit of practice. Once you master lip tucking, things get easier for you. Okay, I've done the very, very front bottom only. Now, and here's my clay. My clay is still concentrated right in the front bottom. Now we're going to do the front top. And the front top, I've actually got a little too much skin, so I'm going to trim some off. Trim little by little when you're not sure, because you don't want to short yourself. Front top, I'm going to do the same thing. Now I have plenty of glue in there, so it should slide in. I'm having to put pressure on the skin to get it in, but it's going in without puncturing anything. And I'm working my way a little off to the side, down the sides. And don't tuck the whole lip without backing up and grooming a little bit and see how you're doing. Okay, now I have a pretty good little wrinkle right here. I'm going to see what's causing it in a minute here before I go too far. And the skin, because it's got glue underneath it, I'm gathering my skin, so I'm going to kind of re-taxi. Okay, and I think this is going to work. Now, the next thing, I've got the front bottom first. I got the front top next. Next thing I'm going to do is do my back corner. See how I divided that in half? By tucking these first, now I only have one half here and one half here, rather than trying to go all the way around the whole thing. Okay, I'm going to go to the back corner, and I'm going to tuck my back corner. Okay, and then I'm going to do the bottom lip. And I'm going to do the top. I have a little too much skin. I'm going to trim some of that off. Something else you may have noticed is on animals like deer and caribou, all ungulates, you've got papillae that are inside of the mouth. That's the skin inside of the mouth, and they have all those little kind of appendages on them. If you try to tuck all of those, it gets pretty bulky in this slot. We take a scythe knife and shave those off, and it makes tucking lips much easier. So spend a little time shaving down your papillae. Okay, now make sure that you want, even on your deer, caribou, moose, whatever it happens to be, I want hair to meet hair. I don't want, unless it's an open mouth, I don't want bare skin or gum line out here. I'm going to do the same on the other side. And just whatever tool you use, don't punch through the skin is your goal. Coax it in. This would be good having this being able to be edited, because you can cut this part down to about 2 minutes.
That's true. And just continue to groom him as you go. Okay, I'm going to raise him up a little bit if I can. Okay, now we're going to do, if you notice on one side I set an eye before we started, and I'm going to set the eye on the other side. Got one ear over here a little misaligned. And the first thing I'm going to do is locate my lacrimal crease. And I'm going to take my little eye tool, or lip tool, and I'm going to look in there and I'm going to Make sure that it's cut nice and deep enough. My eye skin is drying out pretty fast. I'm going to give it a squirt of water. I'm going to take a brush and I'm going to put a good amount of glue in that cut that we made for the tear duct. I can do it this way without getting it all over the eye. I can wash my brush. Okay, I'm going to take critter clay. I'm going to take a small amount of critter clay, kind of about like a little bit longer than a baked bean. And I'm going to just stick it onto my any kind of tool. And I'm going to slide it in and I'm going to build up that lobe on the top of the tear duct. By sticking it up there, I just kind of trapped it with my fingers, and I've got it just under the skin. It's not going anywhere. Now I can tuck my tear duct, and I can push that clay down over the tuck, and it's going to seal it up, so I'm not going to have any kind of a crack there in case I didn't cut my tear duct accurate enough. Now we're going to tuck that. And I'm watching my eye so I'm not tucking too much of my eye skin. Again, when you're doing any of this tucking of skin in a slot, sometimes you have too small of a slot, too thick a skin, and you can force your tool through that skin. So be careful and kind of get in the habit of coaxing, not ramming it in there. Now with that clay up there, I tucked the skin into the slot, both top and bottom, and now I'm just holding my tool there and I'm pushing my clay under the skin up into that slot. Now, no matter what animal it is, if it's a deer, or a caribou, or whatever you're recreating the tear duct for, the bottom shelf lays underneath the top. This is actually the tear duct goes up at this angle. It doesn't go in straight. So we're tucking it up at this angle and bringing that fatty lacrimal skin down over there. Okay? And that leaves me with the eye skin situated over the eye hole, or the glass eye. And in this case, we're using acrylic eyes. So I'm going to want to be really careful with acrylic eyes. I don't want to use a metal tool. I'm going to use, I lost it, my little bamboo tool. And I'm going to locate my eye. Now I've got an excessive amount of skin to tuck on the top. I'm going to trim that down a little bit. I don't need quite that much. And then I took a little popsicle stick and made like a screwdriver end to it, because like I said, these are acrylic eyes and I don't want to scratch them. And I'm going to separate my clay from my eye just by pushing that wood stick into between the clay and the glass. I'm going to do the same up in the front. Take my skin and I'm going to push my skin down into that slot. Now, a brush is an excellent tool to set an eye with, and I don't have to worry about scratching these. But I can tuck my skin, I can shape my clay. My clay's pretty soft. It's easier if it's not this soft. Now these are white banded eyes. I'm showing a little bit of white in this side. Not so much on the other side. My nictitating membrane is going to cover it. We'll show a little bit over here. And now arrange your skin. I have a little bit of my skin from the top of his eye misaligned here. Make sure that my clay was soft, so by working my fingers around it, I was probably putting dents in it, so make sure that you smooth out anything that you damaged. Sneaking a little bit on the right side. I'd like my eyelashes to come down over the eye as a shade. And then get done with the eyes, go back and do a little grooming. Get done with the lips, go back and do a little grooming. Little by little by little, don't kind of pay attention to these little details. And tomorrow, make sure that you come in. If you're not ready for him to dry today, put a little garbage bag over his head, and he'll be just perfect to work on tomorrow. So we still have a lot of face work to do. A little bit on the mouth here and ears. We'll probably put some carding on his ears for safety. And then the next thing we need to do is we'll probably wet this, and we're going to align all of this skin, tack it into place, and then we'll take, I'm not going to do it for you now because of time, but we're going to take we call it fin carding. Works good on birds and fish, but this is a plastic carding material. And we're going to cut this skin, once it's all aligned, we're going to put really good Pro 1 high paste here. We're going to pull this skin over the edge. We're going to take the carding right to the edge. We're going to cut it to that shape and put T-pins in here to hold it in place. And we'll usually cut this so that it's maybe about a ½ inch long, because as it dries, it's going to recede back over the animal's shoulders. We're going to pin this in place. It's got holes in it, so it'll dry really good. We're going to follow the perimeter of the whole shoulders, let it dry with about a ½ inch extra here. When it's dry, we're going to come in and we're going to cut it, and it's going to line up perfectly on the edge of your pedestal mount. So that will be, we'll probably do that off camera so you don't have to watch. But we're getting him little by little by little. Mm-hmm. Okay, and we have a giveaway for this week. And with our eyes, like I said, acrylic eyes, take a look at these. Can you get a shot of these? These are live eyes, and these are their parabolic. Can you see that? Oh, this is one of their deer, and it's gorgeous. Mm-hmm. But using acrylic eyes, we don't want to use metal tools that we can't be without in the shop. Mm-hmm. And the winner is, what they have to do, like and share, like and share.
Like and share, yes. So make sure to like and share this video to be entered in next week's giveaway. And the winner for today is Stephen Warner.
Steve, you're gonna like them. Yes. They don't look like much when you get them, and you will not be able to operate without them.
Awesome.
Okay, thanks for joining us. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties. We'll be a little late, but should be up and running tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
See ya.
Thanks, girls.